In the world of Hollywood, few moments have stunned audiences like the night Will Smith, one of the industry's most admired figures, walked onto the Oscars stage and altered his legacy in a single act. The incident became more than just a viral headline. It was a cultural flashpoint that exposed the fragility behind fame, the pressures of public perfection, and the silent battles even the brightest stars fight behind closed doors. Before that night, Will Smith was the embodiment of success, a Grammy-winning rapper, a blockbuster king, and a symbol of positivity who had spent 3 decades building an unblemished reputation. But beneath the laughter, the charisma, and the charm, a storm had been brewing, one born of years of emotional strain, family struggles, and the relentless demand to maintain an image of strength and grace. As the world replayed the clip millions of times, what followed was a whirlwind of judgment, reflection, and pain. For Will, the slap wasn't just an impulsive act. It was a breaking point, the culmination of internal pressures that had long gone unspoken. In the aftermath, his career, relationships, and public trust were shaken to their core. Yet, amid the chaos, something unexpected began to unfold, an emotional confession that peeled back the layers of a man once thought untouchable, revealing vulnerability, remorse, and a search for redemption. This documentary explores that turbulent journey, from the night that changed everything, through the depths of his emotional fallout, to the confessions that redefined his humanity. It's not just a story about scandal or fame, but about the courage to face one's deepest flaws and find healing in the aftermath of public failure. This is Will Smith's story, raw, emotional, and unapologetically human. March 27, 2022, a night meant to celebrate artistry, legacy, and cinematic brilliance, would instead become one of the most unforgettable evenings in Hollywood history. The Dolby Theater was alive with laughter and applause as stars gathered under the glittering lights of the Academy Awards. Among them was Will Smith, a longtime nominee finally on the brink of the career-defining moment he had dreamed of for decades. But in an instant, celebration turned to disbelief. When comedian Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter faded as Will, in a moment of raw emotion, walked onto the stage and struck Rock across the face. What followed was a silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the room. Millions watched in shock, struggling to make sense of what had just happened. Within minutes, the internet ignited. Cameras captured every angle, every reaction, from stunned celebrities in the audience to the awkward applause that accompanied Will's later Oscar win for King Richard. The man who had long represented discipline, humor, and grace now stood at the center of a global storm. That night, the world witnessed not the triumph of a lifetime, but the unraveling of a carefully built legacy. Behind the bright lights and polished smiles, something deeper had broken. A moment of suppressed pain and private turmoil erupting in public view. As Will left the stage, holding the golden statue that symbolized years of perseverance, it no longer felt like victory. It felt like a turning point, the beginning of an emotional reckoning that would redefine how the world saw him and how he saw himself. That single act, lasting mere seconds, set off a ripple effect that would test his spirit, his family, and his career in ways he never imagined. In the days that followed, the shockwave from that single moment spread far beyond the Dolby Theater. Headlines dominated global news cycles, late-night hosts dissected every frame, and social media erupted with opinions that split the world in two. Some defended Will Smith, calling his actions a human response to emotional strain, while others condemned him for tainting what should have been Hollywood's most prestigious night. The Academy quickly responded, issuing public statements, opening investigations, and eventually banning him from attending the Oscars for 10 years. For a man once seen as the gold standard of professionalism, the fall from grace was swift and merciless. Major film studios froze ongoing projects, endorsement deals were quietly shelved, and Smith's once bright public image dimmed overnight. The man who had spent decades inspiring millions with his charm and discipline suddenly found himself isolated, vilified, and misunderstood. The emotional cost was heavy. Insiders close to Smith described a period of deep reflection, days spent in silence, away from the spotlight, wrestling with the weight of regret and disbelief. The laughter, the red carpets, the adoring fans, all seemed distant now, replaced by headlines questioning his integrity and even his sanity. In Hollywood, redemption stories are common, but few begin from such a public fall. For Will Smith, the backlash wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. The incident forced him to confront not just the world's judgment, but the hidden parts of himself that had led to that breaking point. Behind the silence that followed, a quiet transformation was beginning, one that would lead him toward confession, accountability, and a painful but necessary rebirth. Months passed before Will Smith finally broke his silence. When he did, the world listened, not to a rehearsed statement or a PR-crafted apology, but to a man stripped of pride, wrestling with the consequences of his actions. In a heartfelt video message, he spoke slowly, his voice heavy with regret, admitting that he had lost control and let pain dictate his behavior. It wasn't anger at Chris Rock, he explained, but a culmination of years of emotional suppression. The unspoken trauma, pressure, and expectations that had quietly built up beneath the surface of his seemingly perfect life. For the first time, the world saw not the superstar, but the man behind the smile, flawed, remorseful, and searching for peace. Will's confession marked the beginning of an emotional healing process. He sought therapy, spent time in reflection, and reconnected with family, especially Jada and their children, in an effort to rebuild what had been fractured. His focus shifted from defending his reputation to understanding his pain. He opened up about childhood experiences that shaped his need for control, the fear of failure that haunted him, and the emotional armor he had worn for decades in the public eye. In these moments of vulnerability, the mask began to fall away. This period of introspection revealed a man learning to forgive himself, not as a celebrity seeking sympathy, but as a human being confronting his own fragility. Slowly, Will Smith began to transform his pain into purpose, finding strength in honesty and humility. The confession wasn't the end of his story. It was the start of a deeper journey, one that would challenge him to rebuild not just his image, but his spirit. Emerging from months of silence, Will Smith approached his return to public life with a quiet humility that contrasted sharply with the man once known for his boundless charisma. Gone were the flashy red carpets and self-assured interviews. In their place stood someone introspective, careful, and deeply aware of the weight his actions had carried. His first major reappearance came during the promotion of Emancipation, a film rooted in pain, endurance, and freedom, themes that mirrored his own journey. Instead of defending his past, he spoke openly about accountability and personal growth, acknowledging that healing was an ongoing process, not a single moment of apology. In this new chapter, Will focused on rebuilding trust rather than chasing applause. He began engaging with fans more personally, expressing gratitude for those who stood by him, and empathy toward those who couldn't forgive him yet. His conversations carried a new tone, grounded, honest, and stripped of ego. Industry colleagues who once distanced themselves started to recognize the authenticity in his transformation. He leaned on meditation, faith, and mentorship, understanding that redemption in Hollywood doesn't come from headlines, but from consistent change behind the scenes. Bit by bit, Will Smith started reclaiming his place, not through grand gestures, but through sincerity. His resilience reminded audiences that even the strongest can stumble, and that the measure of greatness isn't in how one avoids mistakes, but in how one rises after them. The man who had once symbolized cinematic perfection was now redefining what strength meant. Not the flawless hero on screen, but the imperfect human learning to stand again after being broken in front of the world. Will Smith's journey after the Oscars slap became more than just a celebrity redemption arc. It evolved into a mirror reflecting the pressures, fragility, and humanity hidden beneath fame. Through his emotional confession and deliberate path toward healing, he uncovered lessons that resonated far beyond Hollywood. The first was humility, the understanding that even the most celebrated figures can falter, and that vulnerability is not a weakness but a bridge toward genuine connection. The second was accountability, facing one's mistakes not with excuses, but with the courage to accept their consequences and strive to grow from them. In interviews that followed, Will spoke of peace, forgiveness, and learning to love himself again. He no longer sought validation from the industry or the public. Instead, he focused on rebuilding from within. His transformation served as a quiet reminder that redemption doesn't erase the past, but it can redefine the future. The slap, though painful and unforgettable, became the moment that stripped away illusion, revealing a man learning to reconcile his public image with his private reality. Today, Will Smith stands not as the invincible movie star he once was, but as a man reshaped by adversity, one who has embraced the discomfort of his own humanity. His fall from grace and gradual rise back to self-awareness remind us that growth often emerges from the wreckage of our worst mistakes. For audiences, his story remains a powerful testament that no matter how public the fall, there is always a path toward forgiveness, redemption, and a renewed sense of purpose. As the curtain closes on Will Smith's turbulent chapter, one truth stands out. Greatness is not defined by perfection, but by the ability to confront pain, evolve, and rise again. What began as one of the most shocking moments in entertainment history has now become a story of deep reflection and growth. Through vulnerability, accountability, and a willingness to face his flaws, Will Smith has turned personal chaos into a journey of transformation. In the end, the slap was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a man rediscovering his own humanity. The laughter, the tears, the silence, all became part of a greater lesson about how easily success can crumble and how redemption demands more than just words. It requires change, humility, and time. Whether Hollywood fully forgives him or not, Will's evolution reminds us that behind every public figure is a person fighting unseen battles. And sometimes, it takes falling apart in front of the world to find out who you truly are. This is not just the story of a fallen star. It's the story of a man learning to rise again. One step, one apology.